Welcome to A Frame Apart, the podcast where every episode we compare two films, whether that comparison is obvious or not. I'm your host, Ariel Fisher.
And I have faith, and I hope you do as well, that I am your other host, Bob Barrow.
I believe.
You believe that I am.
Actually, no, that's a lie. I have empirical evidence because you're sitting right in front of me, sitting next to the other microphone, co-hosting with me. Therefore, ergo, science.
I just got science right in the mouth.
Right in the face hole.
My existence just cupped its hands and let you pee in it.
It did.
Yeah, it was raw and uncensored, like all good science, and involving pee, like a lot of science.
Well, you know, medical testing.
Yep.
So welcome to the episode, guys. It is episode 104.
Nope. How do you say it? Say it right.
What? What did I do?
Shout out. It's episode 104.
104. Yes.
At least until the middle teens.
I am remiss.
Yes, episode 104.
Wherein we will be discussing faith, science, and first contact.
What movies are we going to be watching to give us correct context to discuss faith, science, and first contact, Ariel?
We will be discussing faith, science, and first contact through The Abyss and Contact, appropriately. So both films dealing with the notion of making first contact with an alien species or a non-terrestrial species.
A non-terrestrial intelligence.
A non-terrestrial intelligence,
Yes.
correct. And also how faith interacts with that. Now, with Contact, of course, we will be dealing more literally with Carl Sagan's approach to how science and faith butt heads and how organized religion can stand in the way of human progress. Whereas with The Abyss, the shit abyss, Rick.
Another night of the shit abyss, Mr. Leahy. Oh, fuck it.
We'll be discussing James Cameron's use of themes of faith and belief and religious structure and all of that jazz.
All that great fun stuff.
Yes.
Yep. So we're not going to do a lot of preamble because we don't want to keep you guys here past your bedtime. So we're going to jump right into the water. First.
I see what you did.
Tell them what the hell the shit abyss is about.
The Abyss from 1989. According to IMDb, a civilian diving team is enlisted to search for a lost nuclear submarine and face danger while encountering an alien aquatic species.
Would it be an aquatic alien species?
I said, well, I guess it depends. And to be fair, they're not really in danger because of the aquatic species. They're in danger because of the human element and militaristic presence that fucks everything up.
As per usual.
Yeah, you know, it tends to screw it up. The film is written and directed by James Cameron. And it stars a hell of a cast. We have Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, Michael Biehn, Leo Burmeister, Todd Graff, John Bedford Lloyd, a whole slew, Kimberly Scott. Just a pretty remarkable cast here and just an amazing film altogether. We also have Ken Jenkins. So we have Dr. Kelso.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Kelso. Yeah. So it's all a good time. And
you get to continue being a good cast.
Well, and this film is basically the sum of all of my living fears.
Oh, yeah, it is. Like, if somebody reached into your head and everything Ariel's afraid of, all you really need to do is throw a few anti-Semites and the patriarchy down to that submarine, and you're fucking done. Like, it really is your worst nightmare in a can.
It is. But we'll get to that in a sec.
We'll get to those pieces.
The other film du jour is Contact from 1997. Dr. Ellie Arroway, after years of searching, finds conclusive radio proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, sending plans for a mysterious machine.
Ooh.
That feels... it's not incorrect, but as per usual with IMDb, it's a little reductive.
Well, it's this island Earth, kind of.
Yeah.
That's how they do the same thing there.
Yeah. So the film is directed by Robert Zemeckis, based on the novel by Carl Sagan, and the screenplay by James V. Hart and Michael Goldenberg.
Oh.
And again, we have an incredible cast. The film stars Jenna Malone and Jodie Foster playing Eleanor Arroway, young and contemporary versions. David Morse, Jeffrey Blake, William Fichtner?
The awesome dude that should be in everything is really what you're saying.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey, Tom Skerritt, and Angela Bassett. There she is. James Wood. A whole slew of amazing performers doing an incredible job. And they really and truly are. We also have Larry King in there, so hey.
Yeah, everyone and their dog was kind of in this movie.
Pretty much. So
we will start with The Abyss. Now, when discussing The Abyss, we would be remiss if we didn't, before we get into all the faith science and the Great River kind of shit, if we didn't talk about the production itself.
Oh, yeah.
Because The Abyss, short of a handful of viciously unsafe Uber productions in the silent era, The Abyss has kind of gone down in history and will probably stay on the peak of what's considered the hardest film production ever undertaken.
We would expect no less from James Cameron.
No, it's... Whenever you think about a James Cameron movie, of course he has to... He tells complex stories and does all these great things, but he seems to thrive on not just telling complex stories, but he has to make the behind-the-scenes process of making them so difficult and so hard. But I guess anybody, when you're pushing up against the walls of your form, no matter what that is, whatever your art form chooses to be, it's going to make things difficult. And when you've made an entire career out of pushing things forward, but only Cameron would have the audacity to go, yeah, we're going to do this movie about underwater. Oh, cool. There's been lots of movies like that. Oh, wait.
Hold my beer.
We're actually going to... hold my beer. Yeah, that's basically The Abyss is James Cameron at his most hold my beeriest.
Yep.
Yeah. And shooting the whole fucking thing underwater.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Does he
for the
ever?
most part. Yeah, there's a huge amount of stuff, tank work and miniature work, but shooting a bulk of the underwater stuff for real underwater. Now, I remember watching this film as a kid. Couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. It was on TV, sitting on the carpet on Denny Crest. I think John LaRue might have been over my friend when I was a kid. And sitting and turning it on when they're in the sub. And sitting there on the floor. And that scene comes up where the crab crawls out of the guy's mouth.
Yeah.
And just fucking being horrified because it was so real.
Yeah.
Because it's really happening.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest impact and what he accomplished. He wanted to put you there underwater and make you feel like you're on the bottom of the ocean.
Yep.
And it's lock, stock, accomplished. You gonna be all right?
Yep. For those who aren't aware, we tackled our phobias in 2 years in a row on for our Halloween coverage. And one year, I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken, I got to tackle one of my big phobias, which is megalothalahydrosophobia or megalahydrothalassophobia. I can't remember the order. To be honest, it's not an official term. It's an unofficial term that has been accepted by other people like me who have this absurd fear of things, the depths of water and the things inside and the things that we can see that are underwater that may or may not be beneath us or around us, or the things that we can't see.
Just to lay this out to make it simple, if you were swimming, this is for the audience, and say someone had taken and thrown a picnic table into the lake where you're swimming, and you're kind of treading water at the surface, and you look down under the water, and there beneath you is the picnic table. That's the fear that we're talking about. It is the fear of objects in the water underneath you. And I get it. You don't want to see shit in the water because that's the monkey brain part of us going.
If that's there, what else is there?
Yeah. If anything in the water with you is going to eat you because we're not naturally aquatic creatures. So we're riverbankers. So The Abyss really gets to Ariel, but
in a big bad way. And I watched it for the first time. I didn't see it until we started dating.
Jesus. That's still, you
I know.
Tell people that.
But I tell people things. Yep. I tell people every
Dare just walks up to people and tells them things.
Yeah, I will walk up.
I once set a cat on fire. Okay, and they look at her strangely as she continues walking through the TTC.
For the
it's
record,
very strange.
I have never set any animals ablaze.
No, but I saw the look on that guy's face. He's at home tonight going, that crazy Jew. It's terrible. Ariel has not, to my knowledge, ever set or will set a cat on fire, but the night is young and the week's just started.
But we watched it together for the first time. You had your experience watching it as a young kid, but I got to see it as an adult. And I was freaking out the majority of the time. Bob had to kind of like try and calm me down because, of course, you're watching, and it's not even the submarine crashing and sinking. That doesn't bug me too much. It's more when they're in the little submersibles and they're approaching the submarine and you see that propeller come out of nowhere. And I swear to God, my asshole just puckered talking about it.
Which is funny because that's not even underwater. The miniature work in that scene is incredible. That's all shot dry for wet.
Cool. It's effective.
It is very effective.
It's so effective.
Well, there's so much miniature work in this film that you would never know was miniatures. Like, how many people thought that the Mythic Explorer, the dual-hulled ship above water, was a real boat that they had just repurposed to do this? Mm-hmm. That's like a 25 or 30-foot miniature that they built.
The other day you told me it was 15 feet.
15, 20 feet? I don't know.
That fish gets bigger every
doctor.
time. I'm not a doctor.
I'm not a math doctor of boats.
I'm a podcaster, damn it, not a doctor.
I'm a podcaster, damn it, I'm not a boatman. My career in boating was tragically cut short.
Yes.
When I set a cat on fire. No. Before we get into, we'll talk a little bit about the flick here a little more. Something that's I find interesting in Cameron's filmography, because while The Abyss was a success, it was not the roaring success that Aliens had been, and then his follow-up that Terminator 2 would be. The Abyss is always been kind of looked upon as this strange little piece. Like if there's a low point in Cameron's filmography, people tend to point to The Abyss as his least successful picture. Because you're coming from someone who he directed most of Piranha 2: The Spawning and then got fired. So you have Terminator as his real debut.
Yeah.
Then you go from Terminator to Aliens. We jump over The Abyss. We're going from Terminator 2 to True Lies to Titanic to Avatar. So
is that it?
That's it. He has a very small filmography.
What?
Yeah. But The Abyss, in its own strange way, I think is actually the first film that Cameron did that's his most Cameronist. Cameronist.
It's the most Cameron-y of all.
Cameron-y. That's a much better way to say it, dum-dum. It's the first film of his that's very Cameron-y. And I think you could take The Abyss and put it in the same category with something like Titanic and Avatar. I think those films fit together very well because they're...
Even if you're just looking at them in terms of ambitious scale.
You look at in terms of scale, but you also look at the terms of thematic scope.
Yep.
Where Cameron has this tendency, because I think he comes off as a little spectrum-y in real life, that he's such a intense, cold, focus removed dude that he tends to tell stories where he boils the emotional content down to very base elements. Mm-hmm. You know, he's making very complex films that have very simple emotional through lines.
Yes.
You know, you have the lovers being torn apart in Titanic, you know, which is a very simple Romeo and Juliet, Prince and the Pauper style. You have a husband and a wife forced away from each other and then forced back to each other with The Abyss. You have the every single story ever, like it's the most Joseph Campbell-esque of any of his hero's journeys with Avatar. The most derivative. Yeah, you could say the most derivative. He's boiled it down so far that he has gone past Shakespeare and everyone and really just settled into the hero with 1,000 faces style of archetypal journeys. Mm-hmm. So you have very complex filmmaking with very simple emotions. And I think those three films go together in that category. Mm-hmm.
You're getting simple emotions in the feelings that the characters have when they're reconciling, but you're having archetypes, I think, is a lot of what you're getting at, is that you get these archetypal characters and structures and relationships. Yes. Which is, very much at play even here. Yeah. And those, like you said, those simple emotions, right? So would you say that where does this rank for you in James Cameron films as a personal favorite?
As I really, really like The Abyss. Obviously Terminator 2 is the top of the James Cameron heap. I've long said that Terminator 2 is hands down. You'd be hard pressed to convince me that there is a better science fiction, sci-fi action film out there.
Than T2?
Yeah, let alone, I'd say you'd have a hard argument proving that there's a better action movie out there than Terminator 2. It is as near perfect a film as you could hope for.
As near perfect an action film.
Yes,
as you could hope for.
I would actually say it's near perfect as just a film.
Really?
Yes, Terminator 2 is such a fucking masterpiece that it's almost painful. So for me, T2, Aliens, and then probably The Abyss.
Wow.
Yeah,
Although, to be fair, I'm pretty comfortable with that ranking even for myself.
I really like True Lies, but it is a delightful... I always
forget about True Lies.
Because it doesn't seem to fit into his filmography.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It really doesn't feel like him, but at the same time, when you know it's him, it's like, oh yeah, that's totally him.
It's this kind of... Well, it's a remake of a French film, and it's this very much of a... Almost like a bit of a farce.
Yeah.
You know, where it's everything that something like Last Action Hero tried to do with Arnie's persona, and it obviously did it successfully because it's James Cameron.
Well, yeah.
But again, still very simple emotions at play.
Yeah, and archetypes and everything.
But it allows him to, that's his wheelhouse. That's where he operates. So I would say those are if I had to pick top 3 Cameron films, those are my top 3. I'd
be inclined to agree. Now that I'm remembering and thinking about True Lies, I don't know, man. I might sub out. I might put Aliens and then T2 and then True Lies, to be honest.
So you like Aliens more than you like Terminator 2?
Well, it would be... Honestly, I'm not sure.
You savage.
I know. Well, they're both phenomenal films, and they're both incredible for their own reasons. T2 I grew up on, and I watched a lot younger than Aliens. But I don't know. It's hard to say because they're both so good that I'd almost consider them on the same playing field.
The thing is, I say in one side of my mouth, T2's the best of his films. But then at the other side, you can't fuck with Aliens.
You really can't, especially the director's cut.
Yeah, there's no argument there. But anyway.
And speaking of director's cuts.
Yes, we should get this out of the way very quickly. Ariel.
Yes.
Which version of this film are we watching and discussing?
The director's cut.
Wow, okay.
Oh my God, that's so shocking and surprising. Nobody saw that coming. Not even me.
A lot of what hurt this film at the box office, beyond the fact that it's a very intense film, it's a very oppressive film, but it's designed to be so. That way he didn't accidentally do that, is the fact that because it was so long, the studio made him, for lack of a better word, gut the movie. And he said the easiest thing to do when you're trying to take a film down in length is to get a hold of an entire subplot and pull it out in one piece. So what they chose to do away with was most of the reason for the aliens being in the movie in the first place. They took out all the stuff about them raising up the big waves. They just took out a ton of stuff with the aliens. The problem then becomes, and it was the reaction a lot of people had to it was...
And critically.
Yeah, and critically, now you're left with a film that has a big hole in the middle of it. Because you're going along with this, underwater oil drillers. You've got this great military conspiracy going on. You've got, the average Joe trapped in the middle of a big political situation. Great movie fodder. But then all of a sudden, the entire movie switches gears and turns into this very fanciful, very lyrical, very faith-based and religious presentation of aliens that in the theatrical cut, you're really not prepared for.
No.
But in the extended cut, it makes a hell of a lot more sense.
And it has a hell of a lot more impact.
There's a reason for them to be there.
Well, exactly. We're allowed to interact with them, we're allowed to engage with them, and we're allowed to understand them. And it's interesting that the studio's reaction was to remove understanding.
Yeah.
And exposition and dialogue. And that's such a cataclysmic mistake, especially for this film. Now, frankly, I mean, it's funny because this time around, going through the film and watching it, this film could sustain itself as just if you removed the aliens completely,
yes.
Like completely excised them, and then a crew comes down to save them later, and they, the bad guys that are defeated are the military guys.
Yeah, and they do the same thing. Go down over the abyssal trench to get the nuke. you know, all this stuff, but instead of taking it down to the aliens, they take it and put it back in the sub.
Yeah.
Because they have to destroy the evidence. You are 100% right. It could exist on its own. So like something like Dusk Till Dawn. It does the same thing. That movie could have continued to be awesome without the vampires.
Yeah, it could have if you had continued. The difference being that so much of that film, 90% of that film, or maybe 75% of that film.
It's half. The halfway mark. The film takes
Is it
a
the
switch.
halfway mark?
Yeah.
Because so when you have 50% of your film that's dependent entirely on that genre shift and that complete change, then it's a little harder to excise apart and do it. With something like this, I feel like it would be easier to do. I don't know that it would necessarily be a mistake, though. I don't know that it would be a mistake to remove that material, but I also don't think it would necessarily be a mistake to keep it. I think you would just be left with two completely different films.
Yes, 100%.
And the film that we're given, the film that we have through the director's cut, is this film that introduces religious archetypes with, we have the Jesus figure in both Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. You've got the resurrection, you've got the descent, you've got, Well,
you have so just to
I'll let the Sunday school teacher break it down.
The thing here is you have aliens and they're underwater and they're doing things and they're from somewhere else, and it's very typical alien stuff. We meet the aliens, they help us out, they do some stuff. They're benevolent, alien species for the most part.
Yeah.
But he's taken, just like he took so much of the hero's journey and stuff for something like Avatar, he's taking huge amounts of religious imagery and religious thematics and putting it and imbuing it into the characters and their behaviors. Because it comes down to a very interesting idea, and Contact plays with this as well, is that if we met an alien species that was sufficiently advanced, would we be able to tell them apart from what our perceptions of a god is? In the same way that there are tribes that have come in contact with Western civilization and then in turn have started worshiping it. Like you have the airplane tribes and stuff that have happened in the Dutch Southeast Indies and through Africa and stuff, where they saw an airplane during World War II and then they started building facsimiles of it because they thought it was the gods. Yeah. So exactly. That begs a very interesting question. And I don't think you can approach the idea of telling, especially a benevolent alien story, where the aliens are not hostile, without examining that. So he's dropping all this stuff in. So like you said, just to get the Jesus stuff out of the way. Yeah. We have both of them. You have Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio and Ed Harris's character, both taking the different sides of, Jesus. They're
two versions of Christ.
Jesus is important because he got back up. Yeah. Anybody can die, but he got back up. Exactly. That's what turns him in from the dude on the street corner to the dude that gets buildings built for him. Yeah. And you have the idea is that it was a willing sacrifice. Yes. So you have...
Which we do get from both of them.
You have Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio drowning, and that scene is so fucking brutal.
Oh, God.
Ariel just sits every time, and she's just like, I wish I was dead. I can't handle this. It's so funny to watch her do it.
What? She's just the whole time, and it's funny because with the Ed Harris sacrifice, I don't react the same way. It's very different. It's not until you see Little Geek implode that I have a moment of, oh God, because then he strikes a flare and you see more of the rock wall and you see more of the things of the underwater, and I'm kind of sitting there wanting to die. But when it comes to the scene with Mastrantonio, I sob. Like the whole time.
Well, it's all built differently.
Oh, completely.
And it's so wonderfully put together, but you have her sacrifice and her death, and then you have her resurrection. And then you have now Ed Harris has to go over the side of the abyssal trench to go down and turn the nuke off. You have instead he knows before he goes that he's not coming back. So he's made that decision. It's the It's the night before the crucifixion. The scene, it's called In the Garden of Something. I can't
Oh,
remember the name
yes,
of the
I know
garden.
what you're talking about.
It's in Lunatic's movie where Jesus is hanging out at the
Yes.
start, before all the anti-Semitic stereotypes show up and arrest him.
Yep.
Wow. Anyway, if you want more on that subject, go back to one of our Easter episodes where we did RoboCop versus Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, that was fun.
And strangely enough, see which movie got the representation of Jesus better. It's not what you think. So you have him making this decision to sacrifice himself. And instead of the ascent into heaven, you have a descent into heaven.
Yep.
Into this white light. You even just look at the alien ship itself. It's pearlescent.
Yeah.
You have that's the pearly gates.
Yeah.
It's lit by this, amazing
Ethereal
light. You have the aliens themselves that, while aquatic, really look like angels.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of that is accidental.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's difficult to look at any film and be able to say, there's a lot of people who, laypersons who will watch cinema and kind of look at something and go, oh, I wonder if they knew that they did that. Yes, they did. Nothing gets on screen that isn't deliberate. Now, there are moments where some things are happy accidents.
It can happen, and then we can turn around and, as an audience,
read into it.
But James Cameron doesn't accidentally do anything.
No, James Cameron is so deliberate and so meticulous that he has said, in no uncertain terms, if he was able to clone himself and make a film entirely by himself, he would do it.
Oh, Stan
But he
Winston
can't
said
act.
that of him.
Oh, was it? I thought he said it of himself.
No, Stan Winston said it. He said, the problem with Jim is he can do everyone's job. But he's cursed with a vision, and he's cursed with the fact that there's only one of him. But if he could clone himself, he could make the entire movie. Yeah. But the only thing he can't do is act.
Yeah.
So the actors get off light compared to the crew members because he can do everybody's job.
Yeah. So he holds everybody accountable.
Yeah. Can't put anything by him.
Which is, and how appropriate that he's putting forward this kind of Jesus archetype in such a brutal, unforgiving God kind of a way, forcing his actors to do these horrible things.
Well, James Cameron has a total God complex.
I love the idea of acting and performing. I acted a lot when I was in high school. I did some stuff in college, and I've always been involved in theater in some form or another. But I would have walked the fuck off that set the first day and just been like, nope, I'm out. I got nothing, dude. I can't do this. But that's for my own issues.
Yeah. It's Cameron has a delightful God complex, but the problem is he is actually just that good.
He is.
So damn it.
Yeah.
So we have this religious imagery that we're dealing with, and then I think the biggest thing that you get is, because you could kind of write the other stuff off as, well, maybe this, maybe that. They're going to cleanse the world because we have lost our way with a flood. You don't...
It doesn't get more biblical than that.
No. And, and then you have the common man, the everyman, a fucking oil worker.
Yeah.
Who has to stand in front of these gods and justify ourselves, why we deserve to exist, why we deserve to have a chance to be better tomorrow.
And not even him. He's doing this for the rest of humankind.
Yeah.
It's Christ, man.
Yep.
He's making his plea for the good of humanity, not for the good of himself.
And in typical wonderful Cameronian fashion, it comes down to the fact that love conquers all. That's what saves the day.
Well, that really plays into what you were saying earlier, this idea that Cameron works so well with simple archetype. Well, not only simple archetypes, but simple emotions.
Yes.
Is that it does come down to love, and what he really likes to portray ultimately is love and compassion and understanding and humanity and humility, which is odd when you consider how much of a tyrant he has been described as being on set.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it explains a lot, because when you think of him as a filmmaker and based on what we know of him as a person, it's that level of emotional simplicity and serenity that that seems to elude him.
Yes.
And evade him.
Reaching out through his work to tell people that I feel these things.
I just can't articulate them.
I can't explain it face to face to you, so I'll make Titanic and show you
that I do believe in love.
Yeah, just how earnest and honest I can be.
Yes.
But he couldn't sit at a table. No, maybe he's been married for quite a long time and has children, and they've been married a few times, but they've been with the wife since, Jesus, the early 90s.
Since Titanic.
Yeah. They
met on set.
Yes, because she's a piece of Irish trash or something in the hold or whatever.
What?
Yeah, isn't she a background or something?
No, she plays Rose's granddaughter in the present day. His current wife is the woman who plays Rose DeWippercater's granddaughter. She's with her at the beginning and like is making lunch for her when she sees the news and goes and like calls her in and takes her to the ship. She's the granddaughter.
Oh,
she's the
it's been a long time.
The vague love interest for Bill Paxton. There's that hint.
It's been a long time since I've seen Titanic.
Oh God, I've watched it enough times that shit plays around in the back of my head over and over again. I saw that movie
3 times in theaters.
Of course you did. It was in theaters for a year.
Yeah, everybody saw it multiple times.
Oh yeah, I think Tammy saw it 11 times.
So we've talked about this
is my cousin.
This is going to sound bad, but she's a girl, and most girls that I knew at that time saw the shit out of that movie.
I think I only saw it twice, maybe 3 times in theaters. But again, in the span of a year.
Yeah.
So
just Leo's hair was just so powerful an image.
Oh, God.
So we've talked about the religious imagery
yes.
that Cameron has used, and the dogmatic stuff and the heavy Christian imagery. Let's talk about the issues of faith now that we're dealing with here, because we talked about the whole idea of
that's that good shit.
Seeing a sufficiently advanced alien species could come across as godlike. Mm-hmm. But then you also have, before his ascent into heaven or descent into heaven,
as you see fit,
yes, you have this now. How do we process this contact? How do we, because you're getting little glimpses of the aliens and their technology, and then you have the pseudopod and everything, the water tentacle. How do you start to process that when these people they're not like, she's a scientist, but they're engineers. They're tool pushers. They're tactile people. They'll believe it if they can see it, measure it, and put a wrench on it.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with that and with the way that it all comes across is you have the difference between military influence and just kind of good old-fashioned homebodies. These guys are blue collar. They believe in, love, freedom, and the American way. They're all about that kind of an ideal. Whereas you have the Michael Biehn character and all these military guys, and they are so steeped in the belief that America comes first. All other threats must be neutralized.
Well, everything is a threat. If I see something I don't understand, I cannot take it on faith. I have to destroy it.
Yes, because if I can't understand it, that means it must be threatening. It must be a threat.
Yeah.
And the scene with the water, with the what did you call it?
It's called a pseudopod.
A pseudopod.
The water tentacle.
Yeah. The scene with the pseudopod is the perfect illustration of this, right? And it's she can tell that it's trying to communicate, but there's fear because you're unfamiliar, and it's this thing that's entering your space that defies all logic, all reason.
Yeah. Well, its water stood up and looked at you.
Yeah, it's moving around, and then all of a sudden, when she wakes everybody up, and you see what's the other guy's name? I don't remember. The guy who wakes up and kind of shifts his hat and then does a double take. And
I know who you mean. Yeah.
Grabs the plant to throw at it.
Yeah.
And it's they're all reacting with fear, but as soon as Master Antonio kind of pauses and looks at it and is like, no, wait, hang on, let's see what it does.
Yeah. Let's
give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's give it a moment to connect and see if it does and if it can.
Well, you see in her character, you start to see someone has the capability of a leap of faith.
Yes.
It's a small one, but you start to see, you connect these dots.
Which is interesting for her because her character is portrayed as being so, she is the James Cameron.
Oh, she is James Cameron in a big bad way.
She's firm, she's hard, she knows best.
Yep.
It's her machine, it's her project, her baby, and it's her way or the highway.
Yep. She can do
and she'll be
job.
goddamned if anybody's going to get in her way and screw that up. Yep. And you see that throughout the film, but especially when they find the nuke and she goes and just wants to break down that door, will do anything she can to kick it down. But as soon as Michael Biehn sees this thing, not only is he horrified, and admittedly almost equally as horrified as Mastrantonio, but this thing isn't even engaging with him. It has totally bypassed him. It's not even interested in him. But he is so self-absorbed and self-centered in a way that his fear dominates any kind of vague thought about patience and understanding and discovery and insight. His immediate reaction is to destroy it.
Yes. Well, I think here is where, and for people out there, don't get your panties in a knot or your anything in a knot about religion or whatever I'm about to say. This is, I think, where you see a clear explanation of the difference between faith and religion. They are generally put together, but they are very different things. You know, you do not have to be religious to have faith, but the religious generally have faith. You know, like not all whiskey is scotch, but all scotch is whiskey.
Yeah.
And you see somebody with faith who, with Mary Elizabeth and the rest of them, that want to interact with this and want to see what's going on. And they're explorers. They want to know. Mm-hmm. You know, they want to know what's out there. That's why you go to the bottom of the ocean in the first place, not to hang out. You want to see what's there. What can we do?
Yeah.
Whereas
although, to be fair with them, it's to fulfill a very specific purpose.
It's very specific purpose.
Because they're not scientists.
No, they're not scientists. But she's an engineer, and she's out to prove something, that this can work. You're pushing the boundaries of the known.
For her specifically, yes.
And then you have someone like Michael Biehn, who's a Navy SEAL, and he's religion. He is the religious side of this, where new ideas don't work.
No.
Because they
threaten the old ways.
His belief system cannot process that. Mm-hmm. Where she even looks at him afterwards and says, so we are all in agreement that wasn't a Russian water tentacle?
Yeah.
And ha ha ha, and they're all laughing, and he's cutting his arms open under the table.
Yeah.
Because his belief system and his religious need is being shattered.
Well, and even if you look at his character if you break it down, he has been thrust into the depths. He has descended into a place that is so far beyond his comprehension and so far beyond his ken that it has broken him.
Yeah, he's literally in over his head.
Literally in over his head in water, but also he's just because of what is he getting? It's not SIDS. What is it? It's
he's having a breakdown
because of the
pressure.
Yeah, because of the pressure underwater, but it was also in the adjustment period when they were in the tank.
Yeah.
It was
when they were decompressing.
Yeah,
it's
you get too much oxygen in the blood, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure what the exact technical term is, but it can result in impaired thinking, aggression, tremors, all kinds of
hallucination.
Stuff. So he's basically trying to deal with the concept of first contact while in the middle of a mental breakdown and the complete opposite of the kind of person that you would want in the situation of a first contact anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
And it just, he has, I don't know, I guess it's kind of the same way if you would think about it. What if an ultra-religious fanatic met God? They probably wouldn't believe it. They'd probably think they were a threat, and they'd probably try and destroy it.
Well, there's the big thing, that's a favorite, the meme everywhere is like, what if, if Jesus showed up now and told all the ultra-Christian right that they had to give up all their money to the poor and they had to start being nice to each other, they'd probably call him a fucking snowflake and try and kill him.
Yeah.
You know, which is hilarious to me.
But it's entirely apt and completely in context with what's going on here, right? Mm-hmm. With what we see. But I am eager to I'm very eager to shift the discussion over to Contact.
Okay, hit
myself.
Do it.
I've been watching Contact since I was very young.
I remember I saw it when it came out.
Yeah, and I probably saw it around that time as well, and I saw it with my father. And that was a huge connection for me because...
Oh, Jesus.
What?
All I can think of is watching this movie with your dad is that he'd be doing nothing but asking questions the whole time. Hey, there.
No, this isn't the type of movie. No, you get a different kind of nonstop talking with my father in movies like this. It's not asking of questions. It's reiterating exposition through sentiment and love and good intentions, really, because it is such a mushy movie, but it's not mushy at all.
Yeah,
it toes that beautiful line between sentimentality and pretty hard hitting philosophical debate.
Well, I think something like Contact it's just so fucking earnest.
It's
in what it's doing, but Zemeckis has always kind of been like that.
Yes,
where he's a complete master of his craft. But he's never been afraid to just
schmaltz a little bit.
Just a little bit now. When he over schmaltzes, unfortunately, it hurts him.
Yes.
But he's not afraid to, because I think somebody like, Zemeckis isn't Spielberg, but he has the skill level. And when he's at his best, it feels like that. Mm-hmm. But I kind of put him up there with someone like Ron Howard, where they're both complete masters at what they do. And neither of them is afraid to schmaltz a little bit.
They're not afraid of sentimentality.
No.
Which you don't get with someone like Kubrick, for example.
Oh, God, no.
There's no sentimentality there, not a stitch of it. And for these men, sometimes that can kind of get in the way. But
talk to us about Contact, Ariel.
Let's
this
talk
is not so much
about
the
Contact.
imagery.
No.
It deals with the complete and utter. It deals with the beautiful crossroads of science and faith.
Well, it's based on the book by Carl Sagan, who was a scientist, who was steeped in all of this, and it entirely you can sum up the crux of why this film is important and what we should derive from it in the juxtaposition of two very specific scenes. When when she is being interviewed to be considered to go for the first round, and is asked by Palmer, "Do you believe in God?" She's asked the impossible question, the question she cannot answer, the question she will not answer, because there is no empirical evidence and she is a woman of science, not a woman of faith. And in that moment, that is the ultimate. That she could never have succeeded beyond that, because she has said that she doesn't believe in God. Even without officially saying the words, she has made that statement clear. Yep. Now let's juxtapose that with the scene at the very end, when essentially she's on trial.
Yeah.
Because she has gone through the wormhole, made the various different leaps and jumps through space.
She's had her experience, but to the rest of the world, she just fell right through the machine and has come back with no proof that anything happened.
Because the evidence that we have, based on what the government was willing to release, which is important to keep in mind, shows that she fell through and didn't go anywhere. It was a second. It was maybe a couple seconds.
Fraction of a second that they
in
lost
just
contact.
Falling through, they lost contact for a fraction of a second. And yet, it didn't record a fraction of a second of static. Her headset recorded 18 hours worth of static that they cannot account for or explain. And in their fear of this inexplicability, they still refuse to accept her story that accounts for the missing time.
In public,
but because it is based on science and not based on faith or not based on religion and God, they are unwilling to accept it and to give her the same courtesy that they demanded of her to clarify her belief in a man-made fantasy.
Yeah, man-made idea.
And yes.
Yeah, it's the kind of wonderful observation about the hypocrisy of organized religion and the inherent problem of the idea of a god, of an organized dude doing anything, that it demands the leap of faith, but at the same time the person that is so willing to take a leap of faith on that subject will not take a leap of faith on something else. It's just it's hilarious. Like, that is it's such a beautiful scene that you don't want to sit there laughing, but you can't help but laugh because it's so incredibly fucked up.
It's almost painful.
Yep.
And the beautiful thing for me is that in both The Abyss and Contact, you have your primary figures are women. The ultimate, the sacrificial lamb essentially is a woman. She, the symbol of original sin, is the one to insist upon the search for truth and the acceptance of the inexplainable. Right? You have,
I wouldn't. Sorry to interject there for a second. When you're looking at it from a religious perspective, and I would say specifically a Christian Western religious perspective, the sacrificial lamb is Jesus. That's the lamb. He's got it in the name. When you look at how they treat women, it's no mystery that she's a female character in Contact, because the woman is the bringer of joy. She is the bringer of life. You have the Virgin Mary. She is the one through whom, the universe or whatever, this higher power, brings this gift to the world. So I wouldn't say there's so much sacrificial lambs in any way, shape, or form. They are as the part of the team that makes people out of sugar. They are by proxy
people.
Hey, that's I always love that. Like, would you see a pregnant person, I'm like, dude, you're taking complex sugars and turning them into people. That's kind of groovy. They are the ones they are the bringers of life. They are the ones that can just by proxy do that. So you have the universe has reached out through Ellie, given her this information so she can share it. So she's not a sacrifice in any way. She is the Virgin Mary. But
she is in a way a sacrifice, because somebody had to go, right? Somebody had to go and make contact, because that's, as they say to her, this is the way it's been done for billions of years. But they don't believe her. She has no way of proving anything to them, so she's dead on arrival. So in a way, yeah, she is a bit.
Well, you have a political throwing under the busness, even though they know behind the scenes that she is telling the truth, and obviously more things will happen going forward. But just to get our kind of nomenclature and themes that they're playing with here right, I would look at it that way.
Okay.
So that's what I would say.
But the whole thing for me is, it's so much. And Palmer is the perfect foil for her, because you have Ellie, who's completely unwilling to acknowledge any kind of faith-based anything.
Yes.
Even though she's looking for something for which there is no evidence, for which there are theories that have been cooked up to essentially suggest that we are the anomaly, and the likelihood that something else like us could exist is just impossible based on empirical evidence.
Yes.
And yet she has faith that if it is just us, it's an awful waste of space. So even in her pursuit of science is faith-based.
It's faith-based, but with the one difference that separates what she's doing and why she's doing it compared to a religious person is that while she is searching for something she cannot see, when she sees it, she will be able to quantify it. That's the difference. It's a measurable pursuit. She is out there looking for something that she can't see it yet, but she has the tools through the scientific method at her disposal to, when she sees it, to recognize it, measure it, and see if it's real or if it's a delusion. When you see that bit where she hears the first noise and then it's, she clicks on the screen, it's like, fuck, it's a pulsar.
Yeah.
Next one. And you keep moving on. And then you see, even when she gets the signal, how many procedures they go through first
to verify
that it's not it's not an AWAC airplane, it's not satellites, it's not pulsars, it's not reflected radio signals. They're running diagnostics and other telescopes.
They're contacting other people.
Yes, you can quantify that discovery, whereas just a blind faith in a god, an organized religion, god, take your pick. You can't measure that. You can't quantify it. It collapses hilariously in the faith of any attempt at the scientific process, bringing that to bear on it.
Yeah. And then we're also given throughout the entire film this juxtaposition of, which is it's the ultimate juxtaposition that we see throughout everything, is this idea that science is somehow evil because it's trying to kill God.
Yeah.
But religion, how, you think about science, and it's the science in theory when in the hands of the correct people, which most of the time it is. We will have, there are exceptions to the rules, like the Dr. Mengeles of the world. Mm-hmm. But science usually falls into the hands of a dedicated and capable few who are in pursuit of the betterment of human existence and interconnectivity between races, species, and beyond. Religion is confined to the few who are willing to believe and follow blindly. And it keeps making me think of Dogma, when Rufus is saying, Chris Rock's character, don't believe. Belief is a dangerous thing.
That's what
people die for belief.
A belief is dangerous,
yeah.
But an idea
is a different story.
Well, that's
you get that with Busey's character, and he is the personification of extremism, of religious extremism, that is saying this technology will bring about the death of humanity, will bring about the apocalypse. And not only is he willing to kill himself for that belief, but he is willing to murder hundreds of innocent people because he believes that science will kill hundreds of innocent people. Mm-hmm. We catching on here? Are we seeing a bit of the irony?
Well, it shows how, because there's how the religious, the hardcore, because it's obvious that Busey is presented as an extreme character. So how the religious react to this news, because while it would be considered and is considered, if an alien landed in New York City tomorrow, that would be the single greatest discovery since sliced bread. But because you don't want to eat 2 whole loaves in a sandwich. But you have so many religious groups that are built around the fact that it's only us.
Yeah.
How would people react?
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's not any kind of a shock that it's met with hostility and it's met with violence. Because like you said, it's a belief that's being threatened. Mm-hmm. It's not an idea. You threaten a belief and it's met with hostility and it's met with violence. If you threaten an idea, it's met with ingenuity and understanding and improving that idea.
Inquisition.
Yes. Well, I'd say inquisitiveness. Inquisition has a
term to fair. It. Inquisition has an unfortunate connotation.
But it's met with progression. It's met with okay, that idea didn't hold up.
Now what?
Now what can I do? How can I improve on that idea? It's the same. It's like going through the editing process on a story. Mm-hmm. It's okay, this part didn't hold up. I need to make this part better.
How do I do that?
Yeah, so that it holds up. It's not a matter of, but then you see people who, well, it's my belief that that's fine.
Yeah.
It's perfect. And you shouldn't be criticizing anything I have to say. And the hilarious thing, too, is if we actually did find God, you'd need science to prove that it's God.
Yeah.
Even if he was as magical as a finger snap cue, you could still quantify that.
Yeah.
But keep it away. Keep it away.
Well, exactly, and it always makes me laugh when you get the military involved. Like in this film, when the military gets involved, and you've got dipshit McGee, saying, "Why don't they just? I don't understand. If they're so advanced, why don't they just speak English?" And well, actually, when you consider the amount of the global population that actually speaks English,
70% of the planet doesn't speak English.
Yes, so that doesn't really hold water. The only true universal language is math.
Yeah,
and that is true. Numbers are the same no matter where you are in the world. Yeah. Math holds water. Math 1 + 1 = 2. No matter what language you speak or where you are in the world. You can make that clear. And that's what they've done. They've bared it down to the bare minimum, because if this is an advanced enough species that they're able to transmit that kind of a signal, then the assumption is that we are less advanced and they must pare down. And that's perfectly reasonable and perfectly rational. And of course, the message that they send to us to say, I heard you, would be our very first broadcast. The fact that it happened to be Hitler, yes, a little unfortunate. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's look at what that was in a historical context. Let's be scientific about this and not be irrational, not be too emotional. Think about it, break it down, pare it down. But no, the military immediately has this knee-jerk reaction of no, crush. And also the idea, and I love this, that in the history of sci-fi, and since the first yokel saw a UFO in the middle of his cornfield in his britches in the middle of the night, aliens only seem to go to the United States of America. Why is that? I ask you. There's some strange possessiveness that the state seems to have over a subject that it wants nothing to do with and would love nothing more than to disprove, because the proof of existence on other planets, the proof of alien life forms, means that God probably doesn't exist. And if you acknowledge that life forms might, you have to come to grips with the fact that your ultimate money-making machine doesn't.
Well, yeah, that's the crux of it, because it's...
And they address that in the final court scene.
Yeah, because it does come down... What's the Senate hearing?
Senate hearing.
It does come down to... If... It's actually funny, because if you think about the fact that if life exists elsewhere in the universe and we can gain proof of that, in a strange way, it actually gives more credence to something like a god existing. Because if one life form that's different from us can exist, then you can have all kinds of stuff. You know, like that's what's so wonderful about something like Q on Star Trek, where they are a sufficiently advanced species that they have control over physical reality, so they can just do whatever they want. But on a primitive world, and he's joked about this before, that in certain worlds he's worshipped and he's set himself up as a god and everything.
Just for kicks.
Just for kicks, because he's bored.
Because he's cute.
Yeah. So it actually would give them more credence, you know, because you could have an alien who is something like the Abyss, where they're sufficiently advanced that they can control parts of reality and parts of, you know, we would consider the fabric of known reality. And, you know, then you bring up the idea of, well, species that can move between dimensions. And then you have what happens if you have a species from a dimension where our rules of physics don't apply. So they come here and they're not particularly advanced where they're from, but because the physics are different, everything operates differently.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, because you can't apply the us versus them power dynamics of most organized religions to that idea of a god, because then it also takes away the fact that God had the entire universe at his disposal, but he decided to make me. So I'm special. And while looking out into the universe, and even like Mr. Sagan himself, when he got them to turn the Voyager spacecraft around to take the picture, that famous picture of the pale blue dot.
Yeah.
And we are so small, yet so beautifully significant in our tininess.
In our rarity.
Yeah. That if statistically, given the size of the universe, there's probably a species out there, or has existed, that could do things that we would consider godlike.
Yeah.
But because it's not you, it's not about me, I can't accept that, even though that's the proof you're looking for.
Well, I think to an extent it kind of becomes that, in a weird way, Earth is the ultimate only child.
Yep.
And we suffer. Think about it.
That is a fuck good analogy.
We think of ourselves as an only child, but our father, the cataclysm that is various different Big Bangs, you know, went off to some other galaxy and had another family.
Yeah, but
and
I'm
we
so
can't
perfect.
accept that would be the case, because that means that somehow we're not enough.
Humanity's the ultimate only child. You're right. The
Think
religious
about
are
it.
the ultimate only child.
The ultimate only child, where the universe is our adulterous father who started a family in another county.
But if you think about it, it's also
Think about it.
But I was also so perfect they didn't need another kid.
Well, exactly.
You only need to make me. Yeah.
And in that, if we start to speculate, maybe he had another planetary child, then that eradicates that feeling of significance.
Yeah, because I think as a species, and the Abyss deals with this, and Contact deals with this, I think we've always been on a search for significance, because as a species, you emerge into the unknown, and you don't know what's going on, and you feel small, and you see everything around you is so huge, and still to this day it feels so huge. And then that's just in my eye line.
Yep.
What I can see in focus up to 50 or 100 feet away, maybe in focus, when I have my glasses on. But then you start to look out into the universe and really start to jam on the size. And I know I've talked to people that they don't like that.
Yeah,
that it makes them feel so small. But I was never raised that way. Like, I went to church, and I was a Sunday school teacher and all this stuff, but I was never raised to be made to feel small in a bad way by the scope of the universe. It's small in a wonderfully humbling way.
Yeah, it's the preciousness of it.
Scope of the place. It's big in a way that you can't actually really understand. Which is so fucking neat.
Yeah. Well, it's her entire speech where he's saying, are you saying that are you telling me that you cannot prove empirically that you did actually go? Yes. Are you saying that it's entirely possible that you didn't? Yes. Then why won't you admit that it didn't happen? And she says, because I can't. And he kind of gets frustrated and gets up, and she has the whole speech about how she was able to see for a fleeting moment how small and insignificant, and at the same time rare and precious we are as an existence, as a species, and as a planet, an ecosystem, and that in that can derive that not only are we not alone as a species, a planet, an ecosystem, but we are not alone in our feeling of isolation and bewilderment, that other alien species who have been, transmitting this same message, they admit, we don't know where it came from. This has been going on for billions of years. This is just how it's been done. You pass on the signal and you pass on the instructions and connect with other civilizations. They're just as alone as us. They wonder and ask themselves the same question. They may not think it's some big white dude with a beard and slippers in the sky, but they have their version of that. They probably have many versions of that. And that's what it comes down to is that idea of faith and comfort in the knowledge that we're not alone and that we can connect if we are able to harness the humility to be able to sacrifice our pride and our comfort to connect, and not just with other species, but with one another, and in a way with ourselves. It's very scary to feel not only insignificant but powerless, and ultimately that's what we're all feeling. And if we just stopped doing that and started trying to be more humane and connect more and listen more and feel, we might be able to put aside those fundamental problems with things like organized religion. Faith isn't the problem. Organized religion is the problem. You get that whole thing when they're at the Senate hearing talking about this was the greatest hoax of all time and the millions of dollars that were wasted and taxpayer dollars.
$500 billion wasted, great hoax. I'm like, I know a few great hoaxes like that. They're tax exempt too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so just searingly on the nose.
Searingly on the nose without naming any names, which is delightful. You have the religious character in Matthew McConaughey who's a man of faith, but he's not a man of religion.
Nope.
They never say whether he's a Christian, whether he's this or that. There's implications. He went to the seminary, so he's studying to be a priest.
But he couldn't get around the whole
celibacy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his whole kick is a search for truth, a search for meaning.
Well, because what he says after being kind of Drumland kind of puts him down as a man who hates technology, and he says, "I'm not against technology. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth." And that right there is the point. And it's the perfect marriage between Palmer and Ellie, is that you have this fusing of the two worlds where you have faith. He's not truly subscribing to organized religion.
He's not subscribing to any organized religion. He's using faith in the way it's the best way that it's intended to help you find truth. Mm-hmm. Is I believe that there is a truth of some kind out there, and my faith will sustain me while I get to it.
Yes. And science will help with that. Yeah. Because let's be honest, you can't pray the gay away, and you're not about to start praying the knowledge into your head. Yeah. That's just not how it works. You kind of have to accept a few things as inalienable truths and use some science and stop being an uptight prick. Frankly, okay, so here's my question to you as a nice little wrap out.
It's to me? Okay.
To you. We're going to both talk about this. I'm going to ask you, then you're going to ask me.
Okay. You were only asking me because you want to say it first, but you're being polite, so I appreciate that.
Well, sometimes you need to be reminded that you have to ask the questions back to me.
Okay.
What are you?
What am I?
Yes.
I'm Stardust, man.
We're all Stardust, man. The woman in Before Sunrise told us that.
What am I? Are you referring to my religious beliefs, or you're referring to what?
I will, to clarify, what were you born as in terms of religion and faith-based orientation, and what do you consider yourself to be now?
Okay, so what are my religious or spiritual leanings?
Yes.
I was born, I guess you could say, Presbyterian United. I was baptized United. I have a United / Protestant mom, a Presbyterian mom, and a lapsed Catholic dad. I went to Sunday school at a United church. I was a Sunday school teacher at a United church.
There was a reason why I called him the Sunday school teacher before, guys.
So a lot of people find that funny, and a lot of people don't believe me, actually. I've been called a liar when I tell them that. Why would I make that up? But that's what I was, I guess, born into. But as I was born into that, I also was born into a house that was obsessed with the unknown, and understanding the unknown, aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, anything like that. We were mega on board with. There was, I think, for any religious aspect I had as a kid, it wasn't a matter of believing in God or Jesus. It was just being a part of that community, because my mom had been a part of it with my grandparents and everything. So, yeah, I called myself an atheist for so long, but I hate the term. I think there's too much nihilism in modern day atheism now. I think, because I've read The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and I love it. I can't recommend that book enough. It's hard edge, but I recommend it. Though I think guys like Richard Dawkins actually end up doing a little more harm than good, because they get to the point where they're just basically evangelical atheists.
Well, yeah.
I guess you could say nowadays I'm agnostic, but that to me is also I dig on the fact that I'm a little piece of a universal-sized machine. And if the Christian God shows up, whoa, I didn't expect that. Cool. But then again, I didn't expect Arnie to die at the end of T2, so expectations are up in the air. I don't know. That's a strange question, because so many of these pieces make up me. I have no faith in a lot of things, but I have faith in a lot of things. Yeah, I'm not religious by any stretch of the imagination.
But you have faith.
I have faith in a lot of things. And I think that's probably what it comes down to, because I hate that term. Like, I'm a spiritual person. I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, it just seems like it's so lame. Like, I have incense and do hot yoga. And I'm like, whatever.
Hey, I have incense.
I know, and I still love you.
I know.
I think that's...
Although that's not a spiritual thing, to be fair.
That's a hard question. It's
okay to say you don't know.
Well, I know exactly how I feel on the subject, but it's not something that's I can usually break down and quantify and go, because it's not I'm this. I think that's what religion lets people do, is it lets them off the hook. Because it lets them explain very quickly, well, what do you believe? Well, as a Lutheran, like, that's
You're
weak.
hiding.
Yeah, it's weak sauce. Don't get too judgy, Miss Judaism. So you've got a lot of baggage there too.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I have faith that the universe is a very big place, but I also have faith that there's got to be something pretty groovy going on if I get to live in a time that has Star Wars and Ghostbusters. So, of all of the billions of years of the universe and the tens of billions of people and things that have come and gone over the years, I get to be alive with Star Wars, Ghostbusters, and the MCU. I'd call that my faith rewarded.
Oh God. Okay.
Hey man, I find me something else. People like I can't think of a better way to prove that faith in anything has been rewarded than I get to have that. How awesome is that? I don't worship these things, but the fact that I have faith that the universe can't be that terrible of a place if I get to have Ghostbusters. I'd like to see what your Jesus can do.
I don't have a Jesus.
I mean that as a rhetorical sense. What can your God do? He doesn't show up. But we get to live in a world with Star Wars where if we were all just a little bit more nicer to each other about it, we all would have got to enjoy The Last Jedi instead of being angry about it.
Well, to be fair, I think those people have a lot of other issues.
Yeah. But anyway, Ariel, because you've been sitting there the whole time going, stop talking, Bob. I want to answer this question. Ariel Fisher, what are you?
Painting me in a terrible, terrible light. I was born Jewish. I am Jewish. I have a very... I don't have a very religious experience with my faith, which is a strange way of putting it.
I'd say you have a cultural experience with your faith. You guys are very based on your family. I was
going to say that.
Okay. You jumped in on mine too, so I'm just saying stuff.
Both of my parents are Jewish, many generations of Jews. We go way back. My mom did a DNA test. Apparently there's like 99% Ashkenazi in her. So I think it goes like literally way back.
You guys are industrial strength Jewish.
Yeah, we're like genetically Jewish. But, which is amazing considering how many of us are hypochondriacs. But,
actually, it's perfectly sensible.
It is perfectly sensible. I dropped out of Hebrew school when I was in grade 3. I refused to have a bat mitzvah because I didn't believe in it and I didn't subscribe to it. At the age of 12, I said, I don't believe in it and I don't want to take advantage of something that so many people do believe in to get some money. To this day, I'm still very proud of 12-year-old me. I feel, and it's the very thing that Bob laughed and scoffed at. I don't know if I can say I feel spiritual, but I don't feel deprived of faith. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think of myself as an agnostic Jew. I don't subscribe to a lot of the bits and pieces and odds and ends
the dogma.
I don't subscribe to the dogma of the Jewish faith. I don't subscribe to the dogma of any faith. I enjoy my culture, and there is a great deal of culture involved in being an Ashkenazi Jew, as there is a very different culture for being a Sephardic Jew. There is a very different way of engaging with your faith in that regard. But I do feel very connected to it in that way, and connected to my aunts and my uncles and my parents in that way, and my brothers and my brother and my cousins and everything. It's a
bit more of an old school approach, like the religious stuff keeps the village together.
Well, it's the same stuff that basically made the concept of a kibbutz work. Is the idea of a community coming together and working together and relying on one another and fueling one another. And that still very much kind of sustains me in a way. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that, to be honest. And it's not from a religious standpoint. It is purely from a faith-based standpoint.
Yeah.
And it was, I grew up in a household that was all about inclusion and open-mindedness and a scientific household. My mom is, I think she would proclaim herself to be maybe a lapsed agnostic Jew. I don't think she would go as far as to call herself an atheist. My brother used to, and I know now he refers to himself as more agnostic. My dad, I don't think, would define it in any term, in any way, shape, or form. But we all kind of subscribe to it in some way. But, my whole family works in medicine and science. My father's a researcher. My mom's a retired microbiologist. They're everything they are is founded on science and discovery and innovation and research and progress. So you take that steeped cultural tradition and infuse it with the thirst and hunger for knowledge and scientific growth. And it makes for a very interesting upbringing as a child. So that's kind of, I just feel like after an episode where we're discussing so much about religion and faith and the difference between the two.
No, it's definitely something worth
that we should bear a little bit of ourselves that way.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth discussing, and it's not something I've ever hid from. I think our experience with those subjects, when I say we, I mean Ariel and I, can't be any more different because you're Jewish. That you're born into and kind of given a bag of shit that you have to carry around.
Oh yeah, there's a legacy.
Yeah, with being Jewish, where I'm third generation Canadian, barely, at the calmest end of the Protestant spectrum with the United Church. And that was basically just going because my grandparents went and being there and just kind of chilling. And it was never a big deal. It was never anything. The act of going to church was to go and be with my grandparents and then go afterwards and eat grilled cheese sandwiches and beef eater french fries and ice cream with sprinkles in it. Like it was never, there wasn't, I remember there was a little bit of time when I was doing youth group there, but that was just to hang out with my friends and teaching Sunday school where I was looking for something, you're a teenager, I'm an angry teenager, and I'm like, well, maybe this could be the thing I was looking for. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting, I think it was Christmas Eve service or something, where we had forced Dad to go, because Dad doesn't go to this stuff. And I remember he was sitting there with Jackie for something, and they're doing their thing, and they're snickering to each other, because they're riffing on whatever they see. And I remember turning around and shushing them, being so mad, and they both kind of looked at me like, this is funny. Like, what are you doing? And I had that moment of, what am I doing? I should be back there in that pew doing this. I don't believe this stuff. And then that was following that is when I was teaching, and I took the kids up for the bread and the wine.
Communion?
Yeah, communion. And I remember I was feeling really uncomfortable with it. Because to the people that believe, that's an important sacrament for them. Mm-hmm. It's one of the sacraments. It's very important to them. And I just walked them up the steps out of the basement where the Sunday school was, sent them down the front row of the church, and I just walked right out the front door. I just left.
Oh yes, you've told me this. I remember.
Because I couldn't in good conscience go up there and partake in this activity anymore. Mm-hmm. Because I just didn't believe it. And of course, my minister, my church were so hip. I sat down with them afterwards, and they're like, "You just kind of left. Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't believe this. I don't believe on a level that you guys believe. Mm-hmm. And I understand if you don't want me to do this anymore. I'd still like to do this because I like the kids, but I can't. If they ask me, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
And they're like, "So that means you're gonna stay, right?" I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, I've had that crisis, I guess, of faith. And there's been days when I've wished, I'm like, man, it would be so much easier if I was just...
If you just believed?
Yeah, if I was just... could let that solve all my problems and get the printout of how I'm supposed to morally feel and react to things, and I could just run on autopilot by that. But I wasn't raised that way, I have this stupid thing that I like to do called thinking. And it fucks that religion thing right up. So, but again, for anybody out there in the ether, if you are a religious person, cool, just be nice. We're not coming after you.
Well, that's
so don't get, Star Wars prequel angry at us here.
Well, that's the thing, right? And I think that's something that's important to remember is if you break down, and this is coming from the Jew, keep that in mind. If you look at the tenets of Christianity, it's about being kind. If you look at the fundamentals of Judaism, it's being kind, being giving, being welcoming. If you look at the fundamentals of Buddhism, it's very much the same.
The fundamental elements of Islam, any of it.
Yeah.
Be humble, be charitable, be excellent to one another.
Yes.
As Bill and Ted would say.
Yes, be excellent to one another.
Yeah, that's all it comes down to.
So it's, if you are a person of faith, then be a person of faith in the truest form and be excellent to one another.
Yeah.
And if you're having a crisis of faith, that's cool too, man. Take your time, figure out your stuff, believe what you will. No. Don't believe what you will. Have a good idea.
Yeah.
Have a good idea.
And get some understanding about that idea.
Yes. And don't be afraid of the unknown, as scary as it may be.
Yeah. But no, that was fun.
Yeah. That was fun. And if you guys are looking to catch up on other episodes of the show, you can head on over to iTunes and find us there. You can subscribe, which is a great thing to do because that means that you'll get all future episodes without even having to think about it. You just have to plug in your device and
our
boom,
listens
loaded.
are exploding, and we thank you guys for that. But where are you getting them from? Go get them from iTunes. We need attention.
And do us a favor. We would love you dearly if, no matter where you are in the world, if you listen to our show, the thing that makes the big difference is if you give us a little bit of a review. So just, 10, 15 words, just write a little review on iTunes about what you think, how you feel about the show, and give us a little bit of a rating out of 5 stars. If you give us 5, we'll love you forever. If you give us 1, we'll have some questions, but we won't hate you unless you're an asshole, in which case, fuck you. But thank you very much.
You're really encouraging them to go and help.
I'm selling this,
Doing a great job.
I don't like them. 1 star. Oh, well, fine.
Great
We
job.
don't need you anyways.
Hey, it's a rating.
It's a rating.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for listening to us, guys. And you can keep in touch with us on the various social media. So you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at A Frame Apart Cast. You can email us at aframeapartcast@gmail.com and let us know what you think about various different episodes. Or if you have any ideas that you would like to share with us about future episodes that we could do. We are plotted all the way through January until the beginning of January.
But if we get a good idea, we are not above pulling something out and just jamming it right in there.
That's true.
So,
delicately.
Delicately, but with tender force.
Exactly.
Yeah. Worked out in advance, safe word force.
Exactly.
So we want to thank you guys very much for joining us for episode 104. And
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Safe word. I had to. I'm sorry.
We will be back next week with episode 105. Now, it's going to be a little first to last, but a very manageable first to last.
A very manageable.
But we will also
last.
be tackling a genre that we have yet to tackle.
Yep.
We have not done a single film from this genre before, and we keep trying to figure out how to get there and getting overcomplicated about it and trying to do verses or whatever, and it came to the point where both of us were just like, you know what, fuck it,
let's just do this.
We have to get our feet wet
Yep.
with this. So next week we will be doing our first Western. We will be doing a first to last on the immortal, the excellent, the delightful, the borderline near sexually, disgustingly, deviantly delightful, wonderful piece of cinema that is Sergio Leone's Dollar Trilogy. Yes, we will be following the man with no name as he has himself a fistful of dollars, looks for a few dollars more, and then gets in too deep with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So join us next week for that. But until then, remember, no matter how weird or wacky any of this may seem, every great film and every great idea is just a frame apart.
I had an experience. I can't prove it. I can't even explain it. But everything that I know as a human being, everything that I am tells me that it was real. I was given something wonderful, something that changed me forever. A vision of the universe that tells us undeniably how tiny and insignificant and how rare and precious we all are. A vision that tells us that we belong to something that is greater than ourselves, that we are not, that none of us are alone. I wish I could share that. I wish that everyone, if even for one moment, could feel that awe and humility and hope. But that continues to be my wish.